I never expected my grandmother's call to trigger such a cascade of memories and emotions. My name is Laura, and at 29, I built the life I always dreamed of, a senior position at Morgan & Reed Investments, a luxury apartment in downtown Boston, and most importantly, complete independence from my so-called family. "Laura, sweetie," my grandmother's familiar warm voice came through the phone. "I wanted to let you know your parents and Jenny moved into their new house." She paused, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "They're planning a housewarming party in 3 weeks." I couldn't help but smirk. "Are you and Grandpa going?" "No, dear. We're not feeling well enough for all that noise and commotion." She sighed, and I could picture her sitting in her favorite armchair, probably knitting another scarf. "Your grandfather's arthritis is acting up again. Take care of yourselves," I said, genuinely concerned. My grandparents were the only family members I still cared about. "I'll visit you both soon." "That would be lovely, dear. We miss you." Another pause. "Laura, I know things are complicated, but maybe—" "Grandma," I cut her off gently. "We both know they won't invite me. And that's fine." After hanging up, I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows, taking in the city skyline. My reflection stared back at me, a successful woman in a tailored suit, far from the unwanted child I once was. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents' new house was probably modest compared to my apartment, but they'd never know that. I'd made sure to keep my success private, staying off social media for years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ashley, my best friend from college. "Don't you dare back out of your birthday party tomorrow," she said without preamble. "I've already ordered the cake and convinced half the office to come." I laughed. "In my own apartment? That would be quite the feat." "Seriously, Laura, you need to celebrate. 30 is approaching, and you're crushing it at life. Let's show it off a little. Take some photos, post them online. Show the world that Laura Mitchell is living her best life." I hesitated. For years, I'd kept my life private, not wanting any connection to my past. But maybe Ashley was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. "Fine," I conceded. "But nothing too crazy." "Too late," she practically sang. "I've already hired a photographer." The photographer Ashley hired was worth every penny. My apartment looked like something out of an architectural magazine in the photos, the marble countertops gleaming, the city lights twinkling through the windows, and everyone looking glamorous and happy. After years of social media silence, I finally posted the pictures. "Look at you, girl," Ashley exclaimed, scrolling through the comments. "Your post is blowing up." I glanced at my phone. The likes and comments were indeed pouring in. Former classmates, colleagues, and even some distant relatives were amazed by my apparent success. It felt strange, like finally removing a mask I'd worn for years. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Laura? It's Mom. I got your number from your grandmother." My stomach clenched. Sarah Mitchell's voice, artificially cheerful, brought back a flood of unwanted memories. "I saw your photos online. Your apartment is impressive. We had no idea you were doing so well." "Of course you didn't," I thought. "You never bothered to ask." "We're having that housewarming party next weekend," she pressed on. "We'd love for you to come. Everyone would be so happy to see you." "I bet they would, now that I'm successful." "I'll think about it," I replied coldly, then hung up. Sitting on my couch, staring at the city below, memories started flooding back. Memories I'd tried so hard to suppress. I wasn't supposed to exist. My mother was 22, fresh out of college, when she got pregnant. She and Dad had big plans, traveling, building careers, enjoying their youth. A baby wasn't part of that picture. Mrs. Mitchell, I could almost hear the doctor's voice from the story my grandmother once told me. An abortion could compromise your ability to have children in the future. So they kept me. Not out of love or desire, but out of fear of future regret. As soon as I was born, they started leaving me with my grandparents. First for weekends, then for weeks at a time. My earliest memories weren't of my parents' house, but of my grandparents' cozy home. The smell of grandma's cookies, the sound of grandpa's laugh, the feeling of being genuinely wanted. They gave me what my parents couldn't, or wouldn't. Everything changed when I turned 6. My grandparents finally put their foot down. "She needs to go to school," Grandma told my parents firmly. "She needs stability, her own home. You can't keep passing her around like this." "But she's happy here," my mother protested weakly. "She needs her parents," Grandpa's voice was unusually stern. "It's time you step up and take responsibility." By then, my parents had established their careers and bought a house. They reluctantly agreed to take me back, but I later learned they had other plans brewing. They wanted another child, a planned one this time. I was 7 when Mom announced her pregnancy. I remember her glowing face, Dad's proud smile, the way they decorated the nursery months in advance. Everything I never got. Jenny was born on a bright spring morning. From the moment they brought her home, the contrast in how they treated us was stark. While I ate breakfast alone before school, Mom would spoon-feed Jenny with airplane noises. When I got straight A's on my report card, Dad barely glanced at it before returning to helping Jenny with her finger painting. "Mom, I got the lead role in the school play," I announced one evening. "That's nice, honey," she responded absently, not looking up from recording Jenny's first steps on her phone. I stopped telling them about my achievements after a while. Instead, I'd ride my bike to my grandparents' house after school, where someone actually cared. "Show me that report card again," Grandpa would say, beaming with pride. "My brilliant girl." They remembered every birthday, every school event. When I won the science fair in 5th grade, they were the only ones in the audience. My parents had taken Jenny to her dance recital instead. "We'll have cake when we get back," Mom had promised that morning. They didn't get back until late. Jenny was tired from dancing, so they postponed my birthday celebration. It never happened. The pattern continued year after year. They forgot my piano recital, where I played the opening solo. They missed my middle school graduation, claiming Jenny had a cold. When I won a state-level math competition, they were at Jenny's soccer practice. Meanwhile, Jenny's life was meticulously documented. Every lost tooth warranted a family celebration. Her first bike ride was photographed from multiple angles. When she made the junior cheerleading squad, our living room was decorated with balloons for a week. I found solace in my studies and my grandparents' unconditional love. Every weekend, I'd escape to their house, where Grandma would listen to my stories and Grandpa would help with my homework. "You're going to do great things, Laura," Grandma would say, slipping me a new book or a small trinket. "Just you wait and see." But at home, I was invisible. Unless Jenny needed something, then I became the built-in babysitter, the tutor, the convenient older sister who could drive her to friends' houses. Jenny grew more insufferable with each passing year. By the time she was 9, she'd become a master manipulator, knowing exactly how to twist our parents around her finger. "You're just the mistake they got stuck with," she'd taunt me. "Nobody wants you here." I usually ignored her barbs, but one day, when I was 17, she went too far. I was studying for my AP exams when she barged into my room. "Move your stuff, I need your desk for my art project," she demanded. "I'm studying, Jenny." "Use your own desk." "No, I want this one." "Mom and Dad said I could have whatever I want in this house." "That's not true, and I'm busy." She started throwing my textbooks on the floor. "You're so selfish. You're just jealous, because Mom and Dad love me more." Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up frustration bubbled to the surface. I grabbed her phone from her hand. "Give it back," she shrieked. "No, you're grounded. Go to your room and think about how you treat people." She stomped off, screaming threats about telling our parents. I didn't care. Someone had to teach her about consequences. When Mom and Dad came home, Jenny put on quite a show. Crocodile tears streamed down her face as she spun her tail. She hit me, Jenny sobbed. And she took my phone and locked me in my room. I never hit her, I said calmly. I took her phone because she was being disrespectful and destroying my study materials. Mom's face turned red with anger. How dare you touch your sister? I didn't. Give me your phone, Dad demanded. You're grounded for a month. No going out except for school. I have the class trip this weekend. Cancelled, Mom snapped. Maybe this will teach you to be kinder to your sister. For the next month, they acted like I didn't exist. They'd walk past me in hallways without acknowledgement. At dinner, they'd talk around me as if I were invisible. Jenny smirked throughout it all, knowing she'd won. That was the moment I truly understood, these people weren't my family. They were just strangers who happened to share my DNA. When graduation day came, I wasn't surprised to find only my grandparents in the audience. Mom had told them I wasn't worthy of their presence. My valedictorian speech earned a standing ovation, but the 2 empty seats in the family section spoke volumes. We're so proud of you, sweetheart, Grandma said afterward, hugging me tight. Where are your parents? Asked Mrs. Thompson, my favorite teacher. I just shrugged. By then, their absence had become the most natural thing in the world. The day after graduation, Mom and Dad called me into the living room. I knew from their expressions that this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. You're 18 now, Dad started, his voice businesslike. An adult. It's time for you to move out, Mom added bluntly, not even trying to soften the blow. I discreetly pressed record on my phone, sliding it partially under my thigh on the couch. Something told me I needed to document this moment. What about college? I asked, though I already knew their answer. I just wanted it on record. They actually laughed, a harsh, cruel sound that echoed through the room. We're not paying for your education, Dad said. That money is for Jenny's future. Finally, Mom sighed, dropping all pretense, running her fingers through her hair with visible relief. We can stop being responsible for you. Let's be honest, Dad continued, his voice cold as ice. We never wanted you to be born. Your mother couldn't get an abortion because of medical risks, so we were stuck with you. You were never part of this family, Mom added, examining her manicured nails as if discussing the weather. Not really. And now it's time for you to go. I sat there, letting my phone capture every word, every cruel laugh, every moment of truth I'd always known, but they'd never admitted so openly. My hands were steady in my lap, years of practice keeping my emotions hidden. I'll leave tomorrow, I said quietly, proud that my voice didn't waver. Their relief was palpable, like a weight lifting from their shoulders. Good, Dad nodded. No drama. At least you're making this easy. From upstairs, Jenny's voice carried down the hallway, excited and shrill. I'm going to turn her room into a gaming paradise. A huge TV, new console, maybe even a streaming setup. It's going to be amazing. I packed that night, listening to Jenny's excited planning through the wall. 18 years of life fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. The next morning, I took a taxi to my grandparents' house. When I told them everything, showing them the recording, Grandma burst into tears, her hands shaking as she held mine. Those aren't the people we raised, Grandpa said, his voice breaking, years of disappointment evident in his eyes. I showed them something else too, my acceptance letter to Harrison Business School's investment program. Full scholarship, including housing. My hands trembled slightly as I handed them the envelope, but this time with pride. They wanted me so badly, they're even paying for my dorm room, I explained, allowing myself a small smile. My grades and recommendations impressed them. The dean personally called to offer me the scholarship. Grandma hugged me tight, her familiar lavender scent wrapping around me like a comfort blanket. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. So very proud. Please don't tell them, I asked, pulling back to look at both of them. They don't deserve to know. They don't, Grandpa agreed bitterly, his weathered hand squeezing my shoulder. your success will be yours alone. That night, in my old childhood bedroom at my grandparents' house, I finally allowed myself to cry. That fall, I left for Harrison Business School with 2 suitcases and determination burning in my chest. My new life began in a small dorm room overlooking the campus quad, but it felt more like home than my parents' house ever did. I threw myself into my studies with an intensity that surprised even me. Investment analysis came naturally, the numbers told clear stories, unlike the messy emotions I'd left behind. The patterns, the predictions, the careful balance of risk and reward, it all made perfect sense to me. Between classes, I secured prestigious internships, Goldman Sachs my sophomore year, Morgan & Reed my junior year. "Laura, you're exactly what we look for in future analysts," my Morgan & Reed supervisor said during my evaluation. "Your attention to detail is remarkable, and your market insights are beyond your years." My personal life was quieter. When Grandma called weekly, she'd sometimes start, "Your sister," or "your parents." "Please, Grandma," I'd interrupt gently. "I don't want to know." She'd sigh and change the subject to her garden or Grandpa's bowling league. They remained my only connection to my past, but even with them, I kept certain doors firmly closed. Each week, we talked about everything and nothing, recipes she was trying, books I was reading, the changing seasons, carefully dancing around the family-shaped hole in our conversations. After graduation, Morgan & Reed offered me a position immediately. I started as a junior analyst, but my insights into market trends quickly caught management's attention. I spent long hours at the office, taking on extra projects, volunteering for the challenging cases others avoided. "Mitchell, the Thompson portfolio numbers are impressive," my boss remarked during my first year. "Keep this up, and you'll go far." "We haven't seen analysis this thorough from a junior analyst in years." He was right. Each year brought new responsibilities and corresponding raises. I moved from a tiny studio to a 1-bedroom apartment, then to a 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood. Each move felt like another step away from my past. By 28, I was managing my own team and handling major client portfolios. My coworkers joked that I lived and breathed investments, but the truth was, work filled the void where family should have been. Every success felt like vindication, every promotion like proof that I was worth something after all. The day I closed on my luxury apartment downtown, I stood alone in the empty space, watching the sunset paint the city gold through floor-to-ceiling windows. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, careful saving, and strategic investments had paid off. The marble countertops, the hardwood floors, the breathtaking view, I'd built this life entirely on my own, without a penny from the people who were supposed to support me. Now, staring at my mother's text about the housewarming party, a plan formed in my mind. After 11 years of silence, they wanted to see me? Fine. I'd let them see exactly what they'd thrown away. The recording from that last day was still on my phone, carefully transferred through each upgrade, waiting for the right moment. I typed a quick response, "I'll be there." My mother's reply came instantly, "Wonderful. Can't wait to see you, sweetheart." I took a day off work and drove to my parents' new house. It was a modest 2-story in a middle-class neighborhood, nice, but nothing compared to my downtown apartment. Several cars already lined the driveway when I arrived, and I could hear laughter drifting through open windows. My hand hesitated on the car door handle. 11 years. I took a deep breath, grabbed my housewarming gift, an expensive bottle of wine I knew they couldn't afford, and walked up the path. Aunt Marie spotted me first. "Laura, oh my goodness, it's been forever." She wrapped me in a perfume-heavy hug. "Where have you been hiding?" Other relatives crowded around, a chorus of excited greetings and questions. "How's the big city? We saw your apartment online. Why don't you visit anymore? You look so successful." I smiled politely, offering non-committal shrugs. Let them wonder. From the corner of my eye, I noticed my cousins whispering, comparing my designer outfit to the more modest attire around us. Then my parents appeared in the doorway. Mom's hair had more gray than I remembered, Dad's middle had thickened. Behind them stood Jenny, her face a careful mask. The years had changed us all. Laura, Mom rushed forward, arms outstretched, her voice syrupy sweet. My baby girl. Dad joined the embrace. We've missed you so much. We're so proud of everything you've achieved. Their performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the reality, I might have believed it myself. The way Mom's hands clutched my shoulders, how Dad's voice cracked with emotion, they'd had years to perfect this act. The party moved inside. Wine flowed, food circulated, and relatives caught up on years of missed moments. I noticed how my parents kept touching my arm, laughing too loudly at my comments, making sure everyone saw their devotion to their long-lost daughter. The modest living room was cramped with family members, all stealing glances at me between bites of cheese and crackers. Uncle Robert stood up during dinner, wine glass in hand, his face slightly flushed from drinking. A toast to Sarah and David on their beautiful new home. Cheers erupted around the table. And Laura, he continued, his tone shifting, eyes narrowing. I have something to say to you, young lady. The room quieted. Fork stopped mid-bite. Someone's glass clinked nervously against a plate. How dare you abandon your family like this? Getting rich and successful while refusing to even call your poor parents? They've been heartbroken, wondering what they did wrong, crying over their ungrateful daughter. My stomach clenched as I watched my parents' expressions, the perfectly crafted concern, the manufactured hurt. Mom even managed to squeeze out a tear. They're saints for forgiving you, Uncle Robert continued, voice rising with righteous indignation. After everything they did for you, all their sacrifices, how could you treat them this way? I looked around the table at my relatives' disapproving faces. My parents had spent 11 years crafting their narrative, painting themselves as the victims of their ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned them for wealth and success. I cleared my throat. Mom, would you like to tell everyone the truth? She straightened in her chair, confidence radiating from her practiced performance. Actually, yes. Living with Laura was always difficult. She was spoiled, arrogant, ungrateful for everything we gave her. She looked around the table, making eye contact with each relative. She ran away after high school, abandoned us, never looked back. No calls, no visits. We were devastated. Relatives shook their heads sympathetically, wine glasses tilting. Jenny dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, the same fake tears she'd perfected as a child. Let me share something, I said, pulling out my phone. A recording from the day I left. I was 18. Mom's face paled slightly. Dad's hand tightened on his fork. The room fell silent as my teenage voice filled the space. What about college? Then my parents' cruel laugh, we're not paying for your education. That money is for Jenny's future. My dad's cold voice, we never wanted you to be born. Your mother couldn't get an abortion because of medical risks, so we were stuck with you. You were never part of this family. The recording continued, each word hitting like hammer blows in the silence. Aunt Marie's hand covered her mouth. Cousin Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Uncle Robert's face grew darker with each revelation. I stopped the recording. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft tick of the wall clock. This is why I left. Ask Grandma and Grandpa, they took me in that day. They were there when you kicked me out. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You only invited me today because you saw my success online. Before that, 11 years of silence. Not a single call, not a birthday card, nothing. Uncle Robert's face had drained of color. His earlier righteous anger had transformed into shame. Sarah, David, how could you? Guests began pushing back their chairs. The scraping sounds filled the room like a discordant symphony. Aunt Marie couldn't even look at my parents. You monsters, she whispered, gathering her purse with trembling hands. Laura, I'm so sorry, Uncle Robert said, heading for the door. I didn't know. I should have asked. Others followed, murmuring about cruel lies and disgraceful behavior. The house emptied quickly, the door opening and closing like punctuation marks to their hasty exits. My parents and Jenny remained at the table, faces contorted with rage. The perfect family facade had finally cracked. "You ruined everything," Mom shrieked, mascara starting to run. "How dare you? We took you in," Dad shouted, as if he'd forgotten the recording we'd all just heard. "You wanted me here," I replied calmly, smoothing my dress. "I just played your game. The only difference is, I brought receipts." I walked out of their house for the last time, the sound of Jenny's angry sobs following me down the path. Through my grandmother, I later learned that most relatives had cut ties with my parents. The truth had cost them more than just their reputation. Today, I have friends who chose me, colleagues who respect me, and the peace that comes with finally exposing a lie. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's simply living well, on your own terms.